Good afternoon, Western Washington, and happy Monday. I'm Matthew Fab with Western Washington Weather, and we've got a lot to talk about today with our heat and smoke and potential thunderstorms coming up here over the next few days. So let's start with the satellite imagery. You can see we have a little bit of smoke coming off the Bear Gulch fire there. We have some pretty stagnant air across most of the lowlands and some smoke smells at times. And then take a look at all this monsoon moisture. We've got thunderstorms here over parts of central Oregon. Moving north, you see these anvils coming off some of these thunderstorms, and even some potential developing thunderstorms there in the southern and central Cascades. And then we have marine clouds off the coast. So a lot going on here in the satellite imagery and a lot of interesting dynamics coming up in our forecast. So let's dive right into that here in just a second. First, we'll take another look at these heat alerts. Red flag warning in effect for the entirety of the Cascades, and that is in effect here until 9 p.m. tonight, and then this extreme heat warning in effect until 5 a.m. Wednesday here across the foothills of the Cascades and the metro area, including Seattle, Tacoma, and Bellevue. Then the heat advisory in effect for areas from Olympia west toward the coast and then up along the Strait of Juan de Fuca, Kitsap Peninsula, and Hood Canal area, and then from Seattle northward to the Canadian border there. That is in effect also until 5 a.m. Wednesday. And then you have the extreme heat warning from the Lewis County line southward to Portland, and that is also in effect. It doesn't actually look like it's loading for us there until 10 p.m. this evening for air quality advisory there, and then that extreme heat warning is in effect through the end of this heat wave as well. And then taking a look at high temperatures yesterday on Sunday there, you can see 90 degrees again at Seattle, 88 in Tacoma, 95, a new record there in Olympia, 81 out at the Quileute Airport, and then look along the Strait of Juan de Fuca there, 88 there near Port Angeles, 86 near Port Townsend, 85 on Whidbey Island, 72 though up at the Naval Air Station, a bit cooler up there, 89 up in Linden, 82 in Bellingham, and then moving a little bit further south, you can see that 95 in Olympia, 96 in Chehalis, 95 again in Portland, a little bit cooler because of cloud cover. Cool on the coast there, though. 70 in Astoria, 68 in Long Beach. So overall, still a pretty hot day yesterday, and turning out to be another hot one here today across the Pacific Northwest. And then taking a look at this, this is the fire weather outlook for today, and you can see that risk of dry thunderstorms for the central and northern Oregon Cascades and the entirety of the Washington Cascades, and that risk does exist for tomorrow as well for the same areas there. And this is really not a good thing that we want to see, because any dry thunderstorms, those lightning strikes, can easily start wildfires, and that is not something we need right now. So we'll continue to watch this and that thunderstorm potential here. But starting here with the European model forecast, you can see this ridging dominating the area as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, but then we do have this troughing offshore, and this kind of starts to play with some of the dynamics here and bring some thunderstorm chances across the area, maybe even pulling some thunderstorms toward the lowlands. And then as we go into the extended forecast, there's a lot of disagreement amongst the forecast models. This trough moves inland, cools us down a little bit over the weekend, but then what happens next in terms of ridging, where any troughing sets up after that as we go into September, is kind of uncertain, so we have to watch this very closely to see how it all plays out. Taking a look at lightning flash density here on the European model, we can see here potential thunderstorms this morning and this into this afternoon here across parts of the Oregon Cascades, even the Oregon Coast Range and the Washington Cascades. Then that diminishes as we go into tonight, but then as we go into tomorrow, you get more chances of thunderstorms along the Washington Cascades, in the Olympics as well. And then you have some potential offshore chances here on the Oregon coast there Wednesday morning on the European model, and then more chances on Wednesday evening for the Cascades, maybe some of these getting a little bit closer to Western Washington, and then potentially some over the Olympics and the southern Cascades as we go into the day Thursday. And then look at all these potential thunderstorms on Thursday there across the Cascades, moving into eastern Washington. But this forecast is uncertain. Even as we go into Friday there, you can see a lot of eastern Washington with some thunderstorms, and then Saturday potential thunderstorms moving up across parts of Vancouver Island. But this is all uncertain. This is changing from run to run of these forecast models, so we have to watch this very closely, and it'll be a lot of a nowcast situation. Looking at the high resolution rapid refresh model here, as we go into this evening, you can see it keeps these thunderstorms, and showing them at a higher resolution keeps them in Oregon. And then as we go into Tuesday, we start to get some potential thunderstorms across south central Washington, even near the Tri-Cities there. And then as we go into Tuesday midday, you get some potential storms moving toward Portland there, and then into the southern Washington Cascades. And then as we go into late Tuesday night into very early Wednesday morning, some of these storms start to move out over parts of southwest Washington and toward places like Chehalis and Kelso there, even up toward Olympia as we go toward 3 a.m. there. And then we get more thunderstorms moving up toward Portland and Vancouver, Kelso, Longview, and then off of the coast between Ocean Shores and Long Beach there, potentially for some stronger thunderstorms at the end of this run here too on the Oregon coast. This ends at 9 a.m. Wednesday, so we don't really know what comes after this, but this is showing that there is definitely some disagreement between the lower resolution forecast models like the European model and the much higher resolution models here like the high resolution rapid refresh. So we will definitely be watching this very closely in tomorrow's update as well. And now taking a look at high temperatures across the region. So this is looking at today, Monday, on the National Blend of Models high-resolution forecast here. From Seattle northward, another day with highs near the water in the upper 70s to low 80s, and inland highs in the mid 80s there to low 90s. From Seattle southward, you have highs again in the upper 80s to low 90s, even some mid 90s possible in some isolated areas closer to the mountains. From Olympia southward to Portland, highs in the low to mid 90s. Coast again in the upper 60s to mid 70s, and then as we go into Tuesday, almost an exact repeat of today's temperatures. Those highs again from Seattle northward near the water, upper 70s to mid 80s, away from the water, mid 80s to low 90s, even some mid 90s in some of the mountain valleys. Same thing from Seattle southward there again on Tuesday, highs in the upper 80s to mid 90s. Looks a little bit hotter there from Tacoma southward toward Olympia and then down toward Portland again in the low to mid 90s. The coast there remaining in the upper 60s to low 70s. And then as we go into Wednesday, we finally start to switch that flow back on shore and get a cool down here. The coast dropping to the mid 60s to low 70s, and inland you can see areas from Seattle northward likely in the upper 70s to mid 80s, warmest inland, and then from Seattle southward, highs in the upper 70s to mid 80s, and then Olympia there in the low 80s, mid 80s around Portland, though. By the time we get to Thursday, we get back to a somewhat typical summer forecast here. Seattle northward, highs in the mid 70s to low 80s. Seattle southward, highs in the upper 70s to low 80s. A few mid 80s possible, mid to upper 80s from Longview and Kelso southward there. And then along the coast, highs in the mid 60s to low 70s on Thursday. Very similar thing on Friday, but we tick those temperatures up a few degrees, meaning that Seattle southward likely in the mid 80s, maybe some upper 80s to low 90s from Olympia southward to Portland. And then on Saturday, we start to cool down a little bit more, but again, this is kind of uncertain given thunderstorm potentials and where some clouds may be, so we have to watch this very closely. But overall, the next couple days here are still going to be quite warm. And taking a look at these low temperatures, this is part of the reason why that extreme heat warning was extended from around the Seattle metro area. You see Tuesday morning's lows in the mid 60s, mid to upper 60s again around Portland, and then going into Wednesday morning, exactly the same thing. Mid to upper 60s for the lows around the Seattle and Tacoma areas, and then mid to upper 60s around Portland, even some low 70s possible near Vancouver and Portland there. And then as we go into Thursday morning, we cool down to the mid 60s around Southwest Washington and Portland, low to mid 60s still across the Seattle, Tacoma, and Everett metro areas there. And then as we go finally into Friday morning, we cool into the upper 50s to low 60s across Everett and Seattle and Tacoma there in those metro areas. So again, those warm overnight temperatures really exacerbate this heat wave for a lot of people, so that is something to keep in mind as this continues over the next couple days here. Now taking a look at the Bear Gulch fire, we got a lot of hot spots showing up here, going up some of these drainages, especially on the north side of the fire here, and even on the west side a little bit as well. 8,714 acres as of the last update. So taking a look at the smoke forecast, this is vertically integrated smoke. We're not going to be dealing with very much surface smoke, but we'll look at that in a moment. We have some fires burning here in central and southern Oregon. Those are definitely causing some problems here, but as you can see, we got a lot of smoke coming over from Idaho, moving up from Oregon here, and then the Bear Gulch fire itself and this new fire on Vancouver Island potentially bringing some more smoke plumes toward the area. You can see as we go into tonight, just a lot of smoke hanging out, that Bear Gulch fire plume pushing out toward the coast a little bit. Heavier smoke there in the sky as you go south, especially as you go into southwest Washington and northern Oregon. You can see how some of this thicker smoke from Idaho goes into eastern Washington, and then as we go to Tuesday morning, light concentrations of smoke aloft above the Seattle metro area there, heavier concentrations down toward Portland, but you can see as we go all the way through Tuesday, you get some smoke coming off the fires again, Bear Gulch likely pushing some smoke toward Hood Canal there, and that smoke just remains in the atmosphere, pushes south toward Shelton a little bit there as we go into Tuesday night. However, you can see our skies are not going to be clear, that is for sure, and we may increase that smoke aloft concentration there as we go into early Wednesday across parts of the Puget Sound area. And taking a look at near surface smoke, we can see right around the Bear Gulch fire and along Hood Canal there down towards Shelton, even likely getting some surface smoke, light surface smoke in Portland this evening. That clears out a little bit overnight, but then look at along the Olympics and near Hood Canal there as we go into Tuesday morning, another smoky morning there. And then as we go into Tuesday afternoon, some of that starts to blow in to western Washington, into parts of the Seattle metro area as we go into Tuesday night there, especially down toward Olympia and then further south towards Chehalis. And we'll see light concentrations of surface smoke. They're very light, but you probably will smell it a little bit from Seattle down toward Portland. And that just kind of hangs out a little bit as we go into early Wednesday morning. Likely will get mixed out some by some of the winds. And then taking a look at the latest air quality map, as this loads here, you can see our air is not very good across the region anyway. We got Bear Gulch fire smoke and just stagnant air kind of happening here from Olympia up toward Tacoma and Seattle and Everett, and then up here toward Abbotsford, BC, and Lyndon and Bellingham. Some of the smoke from the fire here north of Hope, British Columbia, pushing down out of the Fraser Canyon, and that is bringing some elevated air quality to those areas. But overall, you can see you just get day after day after day of heat and not all that much wind, and the air just kind of sits there and gets stagnant. You add a little bit of wildfire smoke to that off the Bear Gulch fire here, and it just kind of sits there, and that is why we've been dealing with this moderate air quality for about 24 hours now. So definitely something to know if you are really sensitive to these type of things like smoke and asthma and stuff like that. Otherwise, this is just a nuisance to most people unless we get any worse like you're seeing over here by Hood Canal. So stay tuned for more on this as well. So yeah, thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe here to Western Washington Weather. Been getting a lot of new subscribers recently. I would love to see that continue. A lot of engagement here on the channel. And be sure to follow me on Blue Sky, Twitter, and the Western Washington Weather Facebook group for more updates on this heat wave and any thunderstorms and smoke coming up. So stay tuned for more, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow.